But there was some things that I subscribed to as a boy, even playing something as simple as Monopoly with my brother, that, losing was the sin. And so Dr. Day just kind of basically guided me in that time. Jesus is showing me that, and he just kind of takes me the next thing after that scene, and I knew what he was after. I mean, it didn't take long. I was like, what is this? What are we doing? It was kind of like,
I thought this was about my mom.
No, I was really, really like, we're going there. And I didn't know there even existed 15 minutes earlier.
Mm-hmm.
We're going there. Jesus is taking me there.
With God, there is always more. More love, more life, more freedom. Welcome to Zoe's Exploring More with Michael Thompson. C.S. Lewis once wrote, "Our Heavenly Father has provided many delightful inns for us along our journey, but He takes great care to see that we do not mistake any of them for home." Join me and the team as we explore the kingdom together, discovering the deep truths and offering encouragement for the journey. There is always more.
Welcome, friends and allies, to the Exploring More podcast. Michael Thompson hanging out with S.J. Jennings, exploring the kingdom of God together and bringing back some things that we found.
Yeah.
Particularly on the subject of hearing God. We're in the middle of a series where, we thought we would just dive into this pretty big subject. And with
semi-controversial
help of Caleb, have tried to put a path together that's covering these five episodes. We've covered kind of the overview. Then this last episode we did is hearing from God for everyone. And if you're joining us for the first time on this
Spoiler
episode,
alert.
Yes, the answer is yes. Hit that episode to learn more. And then this is a great question that Caleb teed up. What is in the way of hearing from God? So the idea, right, SJ, is that if hearing from God is for everyone, then why isn't everyone hearing from God?
That's a great way to say it.
What and then what? So and if they aren't, why? What's in the way? So we touched on it a little bit. It's like you can't not touch on some of these different things in each episode, but we're going to be.
This is going to sound
really focusing on that.
This is going to sound really judgmental. Okay, so just want to tee that up for you.
So welcome.
Great. But I will. No. What I'm about to say.
Oh, okay. I thought
as somebody that still definitely did before and still does. From time to time, I just think most people aren't paying attention.
Yeah, that's a good,
myself included, in many times.
In the last episode we talked about the expansiveness.
We're distracted, or we're whether it's an intentional, like to keep you distracted because you try to pay attention and you know some about how this works, so you're coming under some kind of an attack or from a outside entity, or something inside you is welling up and keeping you from believing that could be true.
Yeah.
But that can happen. But I think what mostly happens is we just aren't paying attention.
And when you say that, it's good, because I think we give some leverage, or we give some honor to some other places. You'll know what I mean when I say this. Like, what is the universe trying to teach you, bro? Or what is life trying to show you, man?
Yeah, karma is a
yes. So we have
pain in the butt.
We have some categories, I think, for some things like that I would just say, bring those, man. Bring those into this conversation, and yet I think because one of the most significant things in the way, let me answer this question. What's in the way of hearing from God? I think you can put almost everything under the category of he isn't good. and he's, like C.S. Lewis in Narnia, he's definitely not safe. This wild one.
Okay.
And yet, what is at his, if he wants to get a message to you, what is at his disposal? What is at his hands? And what is it that we talked about last week, that this network of communication has been hijacked? Well, is he just sitting back letting that happen?
Right.
So you're bringing up a great point.
I think you're bringing up a great nuance to it, because, I just kind of made that judgmental statement. We're not paying attention, which can be true. But I also think there's some things that are in the way that have happened to us,
right,
that have led us to believe, for whatever reason, that God is not good. So why would I want to talk to somebody that's not good for me?
Or I can't trust, or is
these
somehow
awful things happen to me.
Right.
This I see these things happening out in the world. Where's God when that happens? So I think that belief can play into being a part of what's in the way.
Yeah.
You don't believe he's good, so why would you want to talk to him?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Or listen to him.
Right. So, I before we take a break, Dallas Willard, who's one of my favorite authors, he passed away a couple years ago, but he has a book called Hearing God. I highly recommend it in the exploration of this.
Yeah.
And he's not the only one who talks about this whole idea. But what I love what Willard says. He said to the other theologian I know across the table about that.
Just stealing Dallas's stuff.
That for Dallas Willard, this is supposed to be more normal.
Yeah.
It's a normal Christian life that you are experiencing, hearing, connected in dialogue, in conversation with God.
Yeah.
Rather than rare.
Yeah, it feels that way. And yet when I tell a story about learning my daughter's name, who's passed away with God, in a moment at an encounter, people are like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. And
yet, but it should be more normal. You're right.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think as we go into this break, this will be a hard one to keep short, because whether you're not paying attention, whether you don't believe God's good, whether you have experienced, other even religious trauma, parental experiences can lend itself into this. Your own self-image. I mean, we'll go through some more of these later, but the list is pretty extensive, and it makes sense if you subscribe to a much larger story where two kingdoms are at war over your ability to see and hear and interpret accurately or more accurately. And one that's trying to keep you from the thing you were made for, intimacy with God, and the other that is all about pushing through some of those things that have gotten in the way in order to be heard, to be found, to be experienced as, no, I'm not that way at all. So I think even taking God up on the offer of wanting to lovingly and yet intentionally and maybe even forcefully invade those spaces is a pretty exciting idea.
Yeah.
So we'll be right back on the Exploring More podcast after this.
I would invite a man to the Heart of a Warrior simply because it's a need you don't know you need. So for me, like, Josh invited me probably 8 times before I went. It was Top Gun when he was inviting me all those years, and then I happened to say yes. I wasn't deployed, went, and it completely changed the way I viewed my life. And the way I viewed God. So he was always a father figure, but not everybody has the ideal father figure in their life. We're all humans, but revealing to me that I'm beloved was something I never heard, and I don't know, man, it was pretty awesome. It was a revelation. So, and then coming back, I realized, like, hey, some of this is the same stuff I've already heard, but I'm in a different spot in my life where how that applies hits me so different with so much more depth, you know. So it's kind of like people say when you open the Word, you're reading the same thing, but it applies differently every single time. So I go back every chance I get. So.
As promised, we were back.
Yes.
And,
I was chuckling as we went to the break because it's funny that we think God has to invade spaces, and I know what you meant by that. But it's like when I think you brought it to my attention years ago now. Like, quit praying for stuff we have, man. Like
that's not
God
Caleb,
be with us,
Caleb. That's not even on the list.
I
Man.
know.
It's a whole other the subtlety of that.
I know
though.
it. Yes.
Yeah, God, we just pray that you'll be with us.
Right. Wait.
You know,
Is there someplace he isn't?
Versus, thank you, God, that you're always with us, and we recognize and declare and acknowledge your presence with us. It's us that are turning our faces to you.
That's
not,
right.
Hey, would you come around?
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Would you
Summon him like a genie or something. Yeah.
Yeah, that was good. Yeah.
Interesting.
So
what God brings to mind as we're talking about hearing from him and what's in the way. So, yeah, man, I don't know how we do this in one episode. Honest to God, I don't. You know, the elements that are at play in hearing from God, the variables, you know, your own heart, your own journey, your own woundedness, your own healing, the trauma you've experienced, the trauma you've witnessed. I mean, vows and agreements you've made.
Yeah, I want to get into those because we've taught that for a while. So
we'll
put vows and agreements, you know, in there. I also want to take a big swing at one of the things that I think was in the way for me. I think it's more prevalent actually, so I'm going to push into it that way. I do think that there's theological teaching that is in the way that says God wrote, we have the Bible, we're good.
Yeah, that's his word to us.
That's the
Everything
word.
you need to hear from him can be found and extrapolated from the Bible.
Everything you need's there.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's an example. Of theological damage that's done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's just one of the many things, but I think it's a prevalent thing that you know, and we're promoting actually this idea that God does want to speak to you, show and tell. He wants to communicate. He wants to engage. He wants to reveal, and
he wants to guide. He wants to nourish.
And I like what you said at the beginning of this episode, that believing that he does is important. Believing that he's good and does, that's really important. And then expecting him to. Huge. If it has to be, which we've heard, this is another theological thing that, man, if I had $1 for every time I heard about God's 2x4, I think I'd have several $100.
Oh yeah, you probably could build a cabin out of the 2x4s. Yeah.
So that's just another part of this subtlety of, to get our attention, he has to whack you with a 2x. And I get the sentiment that I couldn't
jolted awake.
I could not see it.
Right.
You know, it was that clear.
Yes.
It was that evident.
Yeah.
But
it's an unkind descriptor, though.
But it's one that's communicated. You know, in several ways.
And it definitely has flavors and overtones of punitive nature. Like, you moron. It's quang upside the head,
Yeah.
Why didn't you see this before?
Yeah.
And that sort of judgmental tone, for sure.
I do think before you go into, I want you to hit wounds, vows, and agreements and explain that a little bit, but I want to set that up with, we all have had formative years. We've all had a family of origin, whatever the family was or wasn't. And however that shaped these formative years that we said, like in the last episode, what are the questions, what do you believe that every thought's your own? I mean, we have heard many men talk about, and women, man, when it's called triggering. When you said that was just like my dad. Or when I watched that, I felt like
when your
it was
voice
my mom,
reached that volume,
my mom.
Yeah, whatever it might be.
And usually they're negative, kind of connotations. That reminds me of the coach I had. Very seldom are they, man, when you said that reminded me of my dad.
To Dallas Willard's point, it's supposed to be the other way around.
Right. So I think that the idea that we have been formed not only by the good that has happened in our lives, but also the not good. And what does those moments do to us in an ongoing and lasting way when we were missed or we were overtly hit and somebody handled our hearts along the way, or several people or somebody several times handled our hearts, our little young Scott, young Michael handled our hearts in ways that we interpreted that in a way that has pain associated with it, negativity. I think that's probably one of the major categories of what's in the way. What's in the way of experiencing the presence, the voice, the love of God. Well, all the unloving things that we've experienced.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And if the old axiom, you get your understanding of who God is as a young boy or a young girl through your interaction with your father.
These authority figures, sure.
Then it's almost, it's almost guaranteed that that's not going to go well.
Even all-star dads, right, are not able to
because all it takes is a moment. To your point, it takes a moment.
Yeah.
And I think with some mileage, I definitely was able to pinpoint some of those wounding moments in my story, but with some mileage, not just on the entirety of my journey, but on the journey that I've been on of receiving and searching after healing.
Yeah.
Those moments come and yeah, sometimes, just tragically, they're intentional. Somebody wanted to hurt you, and they did. And then there's times, part of my story is I made an agreement that my feelings don't matter. Because in a moment, I don't remember the moment specifically, but I just remember a general sense of there's too many other things going on and too much else that needs to be taken care of for you to stop and listen to me and hear me as a 7-year-old boy or whatever, however old.
We don't have time for that right now.
And with my point is with the mileage, I don't know what my mom and dad were going through when I was 7. My dad was 49 years old. I don't know if he might have just lost his job or had a $1,000 transmission bill to pay.
Right.
I don't know.
Right.
So my like desire as a 7-year-old boy to have his full attention. I don't know what was happening in his life. That's not to diminish what I felt and what I experienced, but it's to give a more holistic, hopefully empathetic picture of what might have been happening in my
But if
world.
I said to you, like, dude, he's not there to tend to your every need and pain and mess when you're 7. I mean, what one of us would like, whoa, dude, you shouldn't be, that's not right.
It's not right.
You shouldn't be saying that to Scott.
And I go to, okay, tell me what happened to you that makes you say that kind of crap, but
that's because now you're more oriented to it. But I'm saying,
I hear you. We so often have that perspective, and
that is his job.
That is his job.
Whatever
and as
else,
a 7-year-old, that's what I need.
Whatever else is going on, I
need a guide. I need a father.
Bless
I need a leader.
Bless them, our moms and dads.
Good grief,
man. And our grandparents.
Oh.
And the ages that they were and the times that they went through. But that doesn't make it okay.
I don't know a whole lot of my dad's story, just because he just never really talked about it. I know most of it from my mom before she passed, but I mean, dude, it was crazy, the stuff my dad endured.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah.
So those wounding moments come, and the vows and agreements we make based upon those things that happen to us. Again, there's folks in the world that they're trying to operate, they're trying to live the way we're talking about, hearing from God and move through the world, whether they're familiar with this message, familiar with God or not. There are people that were intentionally harmed and wounded, and the vows and agreements that come from that are deeply ingrained. And then, like was my experience, I had those wounds and wounding things that happened. I can rattle off a few of them, but I won't take the time. And vows and agreements come from those too. So the whole idea, I think, behind this that I want to really just mention and focus on for a minute is what I heard first from Gary Barkalow, which was that your heart doesn't know the difference between what happened to you and what happened to somebody else. Like, what happened to you is what happened to you, and that's your pain, your wound, your trauma. I can't remember who said it. I've been stealing it for a while now, though. The comparison leads to superiority or inferiority, and neither one are
Sounds
helpful.
like a Brene Brown when you were taking
might
in
have
some
been,
Brene
might have
Brown
been,
stuff,
but yeah. So I wanted to say that just to say, I think in some sort of attempt to bring nobility or bring humility or whatever, we say, well, I had some stuff, but
wasn't as
Joe over there
wasn't like
holy
as bad
cow.
as that guy. Yeah.
I mean, I almost just did it with my dad.
Mm-hmm.
Like I had some wounds and some wounding moments that led to vows and agreements, but man, if I told you my dad's story, I mean, we just have this tendency to go to that comparison. And your heart doesn't know the difference. What happened to you and what is your story is your story. So the wound happens. You make this vow. Let's say the wound happened to me. My feelings don't matter. The vow is I'm on my own, right? And so I sign this agreement that says I'll never rely on anybody else ever again. Mm-hmm. I'm going to take care of.
Don't share your feelings.
Don't share your feelings because nobody cares anyway.
We got stuff to do.
I mean, all of that, man.
There's a narrative to that.
Absolutely.
There's a contract in the file. That's exactly what we're saying. We watched. Mm-hmm. We were just talking about off screen some of the Christmas shows and some of the films that we were talking about, and they're fun, and sometimes they're very, very pointed. And they're very, very, they affect you in certain ways. All of that.
Oh, gosh. We just watched It's a Wonderful Life. Talk about vows and agreements. Good grief.
Heard some very interesting background story to Jimmy Stewart had just come back from World War II. And when he's at the bar, it was said he wasn't acting.
Right. When he was saying the prayer.
Yes, and doesn't know what to do, and I mean, it's captured on film. It's, but it was very, very raw. Now that makes for a great story.
Yeah.
But the story that I want to bring into that is what happened to him in World War II was coming with him after the war and into life. He literally is about. If this guy doesn't give him this role, he's going to go back to his dad's. I think it's a pharmacy actually, which is interesting because
that's his job as a kid.
That's the job
Mr.
as a
Gower.
kid. Yes, Mr. Gower, that whole thing. So I think to bring this closer to our this particular part of the series, that there are things that have happened to us that can and will get in the way. Wounding moments, hurtful moments, painful moments, things that shouldn't have happened that did, and then these other ones that are a little harder to kind of get your hands on, and that's the things that didn't happen that should have. When it comes to initiation and validation as a boy, as a girl, on the masculine and feminine journey, I mean, there's a lot of places that the journey just it gets you.
Yeah, and it can be a 1-2 punch. I mean, thank you for bringing it to my attention. Earlier as I was sharing my story, that's my job. My dad's job is to see me and to take care of me and make sure that all my needs are being met and all of that. And it didn't happen in that moment. Yeah. Right. So
he may not have backhanded you.
No.
But.
He also didn't see what was happening.
He didn't get down with you and say, buddy, what is it? Help me help you.
Yeah, so when we talk about wounds, vows, and agreements, we specifically have started saying more recently, last couple of years, these things that happen in the absence of care.
Yeah.
Right? Which is a huge part of it.
Yeah, because we're going to all have experiences in those formative years that don't go well, and it may not be mom and dad. It could be a teacher. It could be other kids.
Yeah.
But if they're somehow shameful in a way that they communicate, that scene that you lived in communicates to you that something's wrong with you, that's the voice of shame.
Right.
Now you're listening to shame.
Okay. I must be broken for wanting to feel these feelings. So I'm just not going to...
Of being dismissed.
Or just at all.
Yeah.
So I'm just not going to feel these things
I think
anymore.
back to, I on the playground, 5th, 6th grade, last of the playground years before it's 7th grade gym, and now you're wearing these uniforms and getting undressed in
white t-shirts and dark green shorts.
Yeah,
man.
that was yours?
Yeah.
We were white and yellow, and it said phys ed on it, anyway, but getting picked for teams.
Oh, man.
Or not even getting picked, not getting to play, and so just
being down to the last couple of guys, and then it's like, yeah, we'll take this guy, I guess. I mean, just that nightmare.
So, all of that has bearing, I think, on, as we're talking about it, on hearing from God. Like, can wounds and agreements and vows and trauma and pain, can those things get in the way? And to either make it deeper or elevate it some more, whichever way you want to go, is there a force at work trying to either orchestrate or embed these kinds of codes in your system?
Elevate. They elevate. They try to elevate them, right? Yeah. See, nobody really, no one does care.
Yeah. So
these messages come, and this is how it's directly tied to the last episode, right? Hearing from God. Well, hearing from other places too, right? Not every thought is your own. So, so understanding these things, and I'm telling you, man, I want to ask you a question here in a minute, but I'm still working through that wound of my feelings not mattering, because that there's a system in place, there's a there's a mafia at work trying to keep me in a place where I believe that that's true.
True. Yeah. That's great. I'm glad you said about the belief, because the wounds, vows, and agreements, they have a fuel system, and that fuel system is your beliefs.
It's beliefs.
You believe it. If you believe these lies, these falsehoods, these things that happen to you are more than that they happen to you because it's you.
Yeah.
You're well on your way to this descent into a place of unworthiness, of being devalued, of being unwanted, of being unloved.
Right.
And so
we're reverse engineering a little bit, right?
Yes.
What you
well
just
said.
described is this place we can go where we feel unworthy, unloved. That's a form of our false self. Because that's not who we are.
Right. And
the other form might be, I have to be the center of attention all the time. I have to be the funny guy. I have to be the helpful guy.
Yeah.
Whatever it is that we create to help ourselves try to manage this wound, vow, and agreement system that's been set against us.
Yeah.
Is this false self. And
it's
in the way.
Yeah.
I bring it up and I go that far with it because it's in the way of us hearing from God. But I would say it is the first place, the first kind of thing where the smelling salts start to come around and guys go, wait a minute. There's a false self that I've created to help me deal with the things that have happened to me in the past, and it starts to unravel their system.
Yeah.
This agreement that they've signed for years and years ago starts to unravel.
Yeah, seeing it is a beautiful day. It's an alarming day when you start to see that construct, the false self construct made up of these wounds and agreements and vows. And I think, SJ, the thing that you're talking about, just to boil it down to a couple, the false self is really intent on protecting you from getting hurt anymore. And it's also intent on promoting you to get acceptance and worth and thumbs up.
Right.
So it's that system. So in your story and in mine too, when we went on this journey of unraveling, seeing it and then unraveling it, deconstructing that, yes, it lends itself to then this really scary place of vulnerability, transparency.
Right. I don't have these manufactured protective systems in place, so now I'm in trouble. But you're really not. You're finally going to be free.
And you're learning how to interpret the acts and attitudes and ways of others differently. And it doesn't mean that you still might not, that there's not still attempts to hurt you.
The Bible talks about it.
So, but I think that's
sweep out a house and get it all cleaned up, and then they try to come back again.
So where does this have to deal with hearing God? Let me just bam. We're going to helicopter this thing in.
Well, but
because it is the healing of these things that you need to hear from God.
That's right, because these are the things that are in the way,
and that He wants to talk about. It's not you go get it fixed and then come to me.
Okay.
It's come to me and I will help you fix this.
That's right.
And
because I'm the only one that can.
And we tend to think that they're material things that we're asking for and stuff, but to say, is there anything in me that is in the way?
Psalm 139.
Even that prayer is a beautiful invitation to communication and interaction with God, where I have written about it, and I've said in many places, it feels like to me there's been several when that's been my question, and we call it prayer, but that's my question. God, what is this? What's in the way? Is there something I need to see or do?
Yes.
And I have felt God's presence. The next thoughts sometimes have been, I'm so glad you asked. Not, I'm going to show you, and okay, you're asking for the 2x4, but rather, I'm so glad you asked. I want this relief for you, Michael, more than you do. And just wait till we unravel this and see how powerful it's been in your life. And I've wanted to rescue you from this for a long time. And now you're paying attention. Now you're willing and ready and wanting.
Because you see it.
That's money. That's so important to why do we want to hear from God?
Question.
For our healing and recovery and redemption of things in our story so we don't have to go forward with that crap.
At the removal of the things that are in the way of intimacy between us and him.
And so
so in the short time we have left, I would love for you to share the story of being with Bill Day. It's in the book King Me. Mm-hmm. Being with Bill Day and that moment where
relief.
The lid came off some things.
Yeah, relief. Just a big relief.
Just a little bit of how this how this works and how things that are in the way can get out of the way. Yeah.
Dr. Day is a friend of ours who is a really good guide at spiritual and faith encounters with God. I can't describe it other than he caddies that way. He guides that way. So, I think there's very few, when you think of Christian counselors or biblical counselors, there's very few that actually practice this. And I've gone to Dr. Day before to spend some time with him. It's time well spent. So, but he specializes when, some things are not quite in sync. I've learned that in being with him, and
he's a helpful interpreter.
He's helpful, and what he's most helpful with, SJ, and just as I bring before I tell the story, just giving context to it is. So I'm talking to him about this stuff, and some things in my history and my relationship, particularly with my mom, and so after you've talked for a while, and Bill decides how long, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, you tell him, why are you here? How can I help you? What's going on? It's the greatest transition. He says, well, let's ask Jesus.
Oh, okay. We can do that?
Yeah. It's like he's a doorman, just open. Well, come on in.
Right.
Yeah. I think he's upstairs. What do you want to see him about?
Yeah.
And he'll just kind of guide you into that space. So I say that a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but it's not that far from the reality of having a guide to take you into that space. And so, again, I thought, back to interpretation, I thought because I've been wrestling with some things with my mom and even this concept of the mother heart of God, nurture and care and empathy and so that's where I was kind of wrestling in my faith journey. And so, so I think I'm coming in, because my elbow hurts, and where he goes is he sticks his thumb in my shoulder.
Yeah.
And my whole arm lights up. It is kind of like that when he takes me into some time with Jesus and we're just in a posture of prayer, and just like this, he's letting me, my breathing and being present, feet on the ground, kind of grounded. And he says, well, let's ask Jesus what he thinks and what he wants to show you about your mom. Okay? So he says a short prayer about that, and we just sat there. And the next image that I have is not of my mom, but me and my brother playing Monopoly. And the funny thing is, if you don't know how to kind of walk in this, it's like, all right, Dr. Day, I'm not dialed in here. I'm thinking about my brother in Monopoly on a rainy day, and but in reality, it's you go where Jesus wants you to go.
Right.
You've given him access. You've given him permission. You've given him and the invitation to kind of come. What is this? So the thing that Jesus was after was this really unhealthy, competitive nature and nurture that I had fallen victim to. And it's great when there's sales campaigns or quotas or
games to be
contests or competition, you know, and I say great. It's not great because it's a win at all cost. But there was some things that I subscribed to as a boy, even playing something as simple as Monopoly with my brother, that, losing was the sin. And so Dr. Day just kind of basically guided me in that time. Jesus is showing me that, and he just kind of takes me the next thing after that scene, and I knew what he was after. I mean, it didn't take long. I was like, what is this? What are we doing? It was kind of like,
I thought this was about my mom.
No, I was really, really like, we're going there. And I didn't know there even existed 15 minutes earlier. We're going there. Jesus is taking me there. And I'm not unwilling. I'm like, okay. And he takes me to this, again, the imagery was, I'm standing there with Jesus, and there's this kind of you think of a submarine, you know, the hatch. There's this hatch thing. And I don't have any, how are we going to get that off? And he says, and he gives me a tool, and I just kind of, and poof, you know, just flies off of this
lots of pressure
mound of
it.
And all kinds of things come kind of like oozing out, you know, not to be too gross, but like but in the ooze is bats and balls and Monopoly pieces and a lot of other things like people, you know, about winning their approval and winning their acceptance. A lot of things that it was just way too big in my life. Winning or losing, that is it. That's the line. And so my faith journey was more colored by that than the acceptance and the love and the worth of the love of God. It was in the way.
It was in the way.
It was in the way, and had been fed quite a bit of attitude and perspective along the way. And so going on into high school and college, competing as an athlete, you know, we were watching the Wild at Heart series. And God was speaking in that series about another man's life, and it applied to me. And you thought it would have been Leo, the basketball player, right? But I told you it's Sam.
It was Sam, yeah.
In those spaces. So it's just fascinating how God can speak. And so anyway, that's just one of the stories of it came with tears. It came with an apology. I didn't even know that was at work. So
deep beneath the surface.
Yeah.
So the relief of the pressure, you know, the hatch blows open, all that. And then you never had to deal with that feeling ever again, right?
No, a great.
That's not how it works.
No,
right?
It's not. And a great thing I learned about this in this process, and especially why it's important to hear from God. So since then, since that time, there have been moments where I've even asked God, like, what is this? But not what is this with a wild, like, I don't know anything, but more like, I'm feeling this. I'm feeling diminishment. I'm feeling its presence, its voice. What is this? Or I'm feeling the need to be right and the need to win here. What is this, Jesus? Is this still in me? I thought and to hear Jesus say, no, but it wants to be.
Right.
No, we did good
the work.
We did good work. We healed that broken place. We dealt with those files so they're not in there, But when you go back to your story, you understand how it works. Though they want to get in there
Right.
through another messenger, through another life circumstance,
Right.
through another event,
Reestablish.
another carrier wants to reestablish that you will win at all cost because losing is unacceptable.
Yeah.
So do whatever you have to do to win, even in Christian ministry, even in relationships, faith-based community relationships.
It's like you get an invader off the beach and they circle the island, waiting for a chance to come back on shore.
Yeah, or take care of one, predator that's literally occupied some space, to then be met with another one that you can go, no, you can't come in. I am not agreeing with my worth or values based on my winning.
I'm not going to re-sign.
Right. So it sounds and feels
agreement.
Familiar, and it wants to get back in.
Yeah.
And I think that aligns with the principle. I didn't even know until later that actually aligns with the principle that Jesus taught, that when a foul spirit that kind of maintenances this stuff is excommunicated from.
You sweep out a room, clean it all out,
Make sure that, you bring in then the love of God where acceptance and worth belongs, so that this thing can't come back and take up occupancy again, even more.
I think it says the spirit goes and it's lonely.
Goes and grabs friends.
So it grabs some friends.
And then it says at the end of that verse, and that person is worse off than if you'd just excommunicated the one thing.
Right.
Now he's back with 6-7 friends.
Yeah.
And they're having a party and you're not having fun.
Right.
And so
right.
it works like that. So hearing God is for everyone, and really where God wants to go, I think significantly, is back in our stories to bring healing. And that is an intimate work. Mm-hmm. It's a delicate work. It's a powerful work. And it requires that kind of intimacy where you're not just laying on the gurney, which would be great, like you could check in and he'd remove that stuff. He actually doesn't use much anesthesia at all. Right. And he brings you to places that you were hurt or harmed, and he's there and says, this wasn't my will for you because somebody sinned against you. That's never his will. So I want to bring my way, which is redemptive and restorative to your heart, my son, to your soul. My favorite one. I mean,
let's get that stuff out of there.
Let's get it out. Okay.
Yeah. What do I have to do?
Yeah, that's a big part of why hearing from God is so critical.
Well, as we predicted, this episode wasn't long enough because we didn't get off the first page of our notes. But I think it's a great swing at the reality that there really are. There are some things that are in the way of this that go beyond even our own understanding or lack thereof. There's some systems at work. Yes.
Thank God.
There's some systems at work and some things at work.
Limited to my ability to understand it even at this point. So it's a great point.
Next episode, we're going to talk about how this works. And really, we're going to go more deeply into King Me and chapter 13, where you kind of run through that. You're like, what's this look like?
Some categories.
Really pretty practically.
And some spaces that similar to this story, but many, many others. And also, if we can get some of those impact sheets, that would be, I think, really helpful to bring some other light to that. But I love what you said earlier, SJ. I think I would close with one of the great pieces of this that we get to bring is the ability to ask and pay attention, to invite and stay awake, to want it and then engage in the process and actually believe that if we're asking for good things like healing and restoration and understanding, that the Father wants to give us good things. Because he loves us, wants us to be free.
It's in his nature to do so.
It makes a lot of sense. And I've seen it happen in my life and in my friends' lives and around this. So
yeah, me too. Well, if you have comments, questions, stories you want to share, hit up the comments section and zoe.org/events for the encounter. Check that out.
And if you want to get away with God for a couple days, I'm going to plug it again. Join us at the Heart of a Warrior Encounter weekend, last weekend in March. Go to our website, zoe.org/events, and you can, join us for a weekend away with God. It's a good idea. A weekend away with God. And there'll be a few hundred other guys there, but we'll give you some solitude. We'll give you some space. We'll give you some questions that you can, after different sessions in the weekend, that you can go get away with God and ask him a few questions. That posture, I think, is another really critical piece. So what gets in the way is the lack of that curiosity, the lack of...
What's this about?
Of a wanting to know and explore that. So
and unravel, too.
Yeah,
I can think of... probably 5, 6, 7, 8 guys that use the Encounter weekend as their annual retreat.
A little pilgrimage.
Those, the guys. They've come 10, 11, 12 times,
Yeah.
So it's worth the journey.
Yep.
So
sure is. So thanks for joining us, and we'll next time get into some more of the practical. And I hate saying that word because it's just not confined to, it's not very practical, but it is very good. So some of the good ways in which we've experienced God kind of moving in speaking and engaging us in our stories as we engage in the story that God's...
Somewhere between assembling an IKEA cabinet and the God of the universe is where we're going to be talking next.
Can't wait. Cannot wait. See you next time on the Exploring More podcast.
We hope you have enjoyed this episode of Exploring More. The landing page for this podcast is zoe.org/podcast. That's ZOWEH.org/podcast, where you can find the show notes and various platforms to which we broadcast. You can also find us and the Life of More by visiting Zoe on YouVersion Bible app, Right Now Media, our Facebook page, and Zoe on Instagram and Twitter. Remember, with God there is always more, and you were made for more.